So thanks a lot for everyone coming in today. I do appreciate that you're all very busy people. So the objective of today was basically to show you version 17 of the Xinet software. And in doing so, what I aim to do is to cover a lot of the functionality, but I'm going to try and cover that functionality in a way that's more workflow orientated so that you can get more from this session. I will say that obviously with the new version of Xinet, there was something like 150 new features that were implemented in that release. Obviously, we don't have time to cover all of those, and I'm pretty sure you would not want me to as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to first of all take a look at the new display interface that comes with version 17. We'll have a little look at that, and we'll look at some of the changes that have occurred there. One of the biggest new features in version 17 is that they have completely rebuilt the search engine from the ground up. So there's a lot more functionality with the search engine, it's a lot faster, and you're able to also search upon text in multiple different document formats. There's lots of improvements around the annotation tool, and that also connects deeply back to the source file. So InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator can actually have the annotation stamped right within the document on a layer. So we'll take a look at that towards the end of the demo. And there's a few other points that we'll cover during this, such as the uploader and some of the other improvements to the triggers and actions and some of the customization. So what we're going to do throughout this webinar, I'm going to go through the demonstration. If anyone has any questions, you have a little panel up on your screen and there's a little chat option in there. So if you can just type any questions as they arise in that chat panel, and Damien and Jill will monitor that chat panel and we can answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I will get started, and let me just clear my screen here, and you should be able to see a blank screen right now. So as you can see, I'm sitting here at my desktop and I have my Xinet full press server volumes mounted over here on the right hand side. Now if we open up those server volumes, obviously a lot of these are going to be completely different to your folder structure internally. So what I'm going to concentrate on is I have a folder here called Tropics Drink Company. And in here, I have a folder called Product Brochures, and in there I have some documents and also a folder here that's full of images. Now, one of the most common feature requests in Xinet between version 16 and 17 was the ability to have that tree-like structure that you can see there actually within the web interface. So let me just log into my web browser here. So this is the new exhibit style. Obviously, exhibits existed in version 16, but it's been completely revamped to work with mobile devices, and we'll cover that in more detail in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here, and once I've logged in, you'll see that the first thing you'll notice is on the left-hand side. Sorry, my screen seems to have frozen here. There we go. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that we can see that same tree view navigation that you can see over here in the Finder. So again, we can just navigate through, and I'm going to go to Product Brochures, and in here, you'll notice that we can now see these three documents that I'm highlighting here on the actual server. So the idea behind this new interface is that on the left-hand side, you have your tree view navigation, and the only things that will display on the right-hand side are the contents of the folder. So you'll never see folders in this area here. They're always stored on the left-hand side. So as you can see, we're in the folder here called Product Brochures, which is this one right here, and the contents of that folder are these three documents. We also have another folder within that called Links, and you can see that that's right here, and if we want to go into that, we just navigate through exactly the same way, and then we can see all of our links that are associated to that. So one of the other things you may have noticed is that there's a few changes to the actual interface, the way that it looks, other than the tree view navigation. So let's run through some of those now. What Xinet have done, they've revamped the actual interface here so that you basically have different icons. So they've refreshed the look and feel of the actual buttons themselves. And you'll also notice that we have a couple of buttons that are missing. One button that's missing is the custom image order button, and the other one is the show info button. The show info button is where all of the metadata is stored and all of the linked files information, and custom image order is obviously where you can repurpose the asset into a different format. Now, as you can see, those two buttons are missing, and there's one additional button that's been added. So this button here, Manage Files, that was not previously available on a per file basis. So if we click into that, you'll see that the buttons change. And from here, I can move, I can copy, I can rename, and I can delete a file individually per asset. That functionality was always there, but you had to do it from this level, which was at folder level, as opposed to per asset level. So that's something they've added in just on an individual asset basis. Okay, so let's just take a look here at the actual assets themselves. If we actually click into one of these files, so let's pick on this one right here, what you'll see is it now launches what Xinet call the media viewer. And the idea behind this is that you might have clients that maybe only use the system once or twice a year. So what they try to do is to build the interface to make it very, very easy for people to use the system without having to have a huge amount of knowledge and make it too complex for them. I'm actually going to come out of here and go into a different image because that one was quite low resolution. Let's go into this one right here. Okay, so we're into a different image here, and basically you can see that on the left-hand side we have various options available to us. So the ones that are in purple are features that are available to us because we have permission or because they're relevant for the asset type. The things that are greyed out, it either means you don't have permission or they are totally not relevant for the file you're looking at. So for example, Pages is not relevant because this is a single Photoshop file. So the other thing we should point out here is that this interface has been built to be mobile device and tablet friendly. So the whole idea is on the left-hand side is where you'll always get your functionality. Now, if I, for example, click on Annotate, it will change the preview, but if I was on a mobile device, it would only refresh this part of the browser window. So it's very, very fast to load. It's a lot quicker than version 16. And it's a lot faster to navigate around the file system. The other thing you'll notice as well is along the bottom here we have the breadcrumbs that show us where we are in the system, and we can very easily get back to our previous function. So for example, I can return to browse and that will take us back to where we just were. If I had just executed a search, I could return from the search results back to the previous function. So the whole idea behind that is that you can very easily navigate the system. And the other idea behind that is you don't need to use the back button in your browser. We all know that if you hit the back button in Internet Explorer versus Safari, you'll get completely different results. So we're trying to keep the experience all within the Xinet interface so that people have the same experience when they're actually using the system. Okay, so let's actually go into one of these images again. Let's go back into this image right here. And let's take a look at some of the buttons on the left-hand side. So the Annotate tools, these are basically available to you in version 17, and you can use them on anything where Xinet give you a preview. So they can be used on Word, Excel, PowerPoint, InDesign, PDF, images, pretty much anything where you get a preview, including video keyframes. And the other nice thing that got added in version 17, and we'll go in more detail a bit later, is you can now actually print out reports of the annotations that were created on the document. You'll also notice we have a little compare button up here, and this is where you can actually compare the previous annotations against the current document or image. So again, we'll show you that in more detail shortly. This button here containing documents, this is a feature that's available in version 16, but Xinet done a pretty good job of making it hard to find. So now it's really in the forefront, and it's something that can be used quite easily. So if we click on that, it actually gives us a list of all of the documents where this image has been used in the system. So for example, I can see that it was used on this InDesign document right here, I can click on that downward arrow and I can get a nice preview of that file. And from here, I can download it, I can add it to the basket, or I can actually browse to where that document is stored. So we've got a full audit trail of the relationship between the image and the actual document itself. Custom image order, again, this used to be a button that was available under each individual asset. If you prefer to have it there, you can still do that. It's just a setting, a tick box that you need to apply, and you can have it underneath each individual asset. But if you don't do that, this is where it will be stored, and from here, this is where you can repurpose the file into whatever resolutions and file format that you require. Custom image order has been around for a very long time, but I will point out that it's become increasingly more popular since people started working on things like banner ads and those types of files with the interactive world. Because as we know, especially in an agency, you're going to use this content for print-related files, but someone might need that for a banner ad. And the guys in the digital department can just come in here and do self-service, and they can create the format that they need to be able to use that in the digital world very easily. So that's had a bit of a resurgence in popularity, that feature, but it's been there for a very long time. Another area here is the info button. This gives us all of the information about the file. If we were looking at a video, it will also pull out all of the codec information. It will pull out the frame rate, the resolutions. We're actually looking at an image, so it's pulling out the DPI, the file space, the color space, when it was last accessed. So the system's intelligent enough to know whatever the asset is that it's looking at, and it will pull out the relevant information for that asset type. So if you open up a Word document, you're going to get different information if you opened up a video, for example. Below that, we have the detailed history. This is probably something you turn off so your customers don't see this. But if you're an administrator, this might be quite useful. It gives you a full history of what's happened to this file since it landed on the Xinet server. So I can see that someone previewed the annotations on that on September the 8th from this IP address, and the user was demo. So you can very quickly identify a full history of what's happened to that asset since it arrived on the server. Metadata. So metadata, again, there's not a lot to tell you here. Metadata is exactly the same as it was previously. You can create your own metadata values. We can pull metadata in from the XMP, and we can also push any custom metadata and physically store it back in the file so that it's not dependent on the Xinet database. That's functionality that's currently already available, but Xinet have just made it a lot easier to access that metadata through this panel. There are a few metadata changes that do make it better when you're viewing a document, and I'll come to that in a moment, and we'll run through those in a moment. The other thing that has happened in version 17 is Xinet have implemented the asset timer out of the box. So straight away you can put a timestamp on this document or image or video, and once that time has expired, it will automatically watermark the asset and make it unavailable for use. If someone did want to use that file, they could click on a button and they could request that via an email exchange. So that's something that's been built in out the box in version 17 that was previously done as a module separately. Okay, so versions. Again, this is a new feature in version 17. So currently, the image we're looking at, if we go into my linked folder here, this is the image that we can currently see at the moment. So if I open that into Photoshop, this is the image we're currently looking at in the web browser. So I'm going to go ahead and close that down. And what you'll see here in this actual versions button right here is that there's 17 versions of that file that are available to me. On the file server, you'll notice that we can only see one version of that file. There's only one available to me. So Xinet have given you the ability to be able to version any file type that you specify in any location that you specify on the Xinet server, and you also get the ability to specify how many versions you want to keep and also where the versioning is going to occur. So you've got a lot of flexibility around this versioning tool. And the versioning tool is all controlled via triggers and actions. So it's a new setting inside the triggers and actions area, which is very, very easy to use. So, for example, we are currently looking at this image here, drinkinggirl.psd, and you can see all of these other versions are numbered down the left-hand side here. And if I want to get back to a previous version, I can simply just tip on the arrow, and you can see that there's an older version that's black and white. Here's one that's not been cropped and it's in colour. So I want to get back to this working version here. I select the option to promote it back. And when I do that, it will then refresh the web browser display and it will update the image that's stored on the Xinet file server. And you'll see that that's the only image that's still available to me over here on the file server. Now let's open that in Photoshop just to show you that it did definitely update that. So let's drop it in here. And very quickly you'll see that that is the latest version that I just promoted. So through the web browser, you can promote previous versions of documents and images simply by clicking on that button. And you'll only ever have one file available to you. Now, the other thing you can do, you'll see there's a little compare tool here. And if we click on that, you get the ability to view the current version next to one of the older versions if you want to do that. So maybe I want to compare this against version 20, and you can see we can look at it side by side, and you can just select the one you want to compare it against. This also works in the annotations as well, and again, we'll cover the annotations in more detail a little bit later. So that's the version tool. The other button here is the zoom tool, and this is where we can sort of zoom in on the file, and we can pan around, and we can do zoom in. You can also use the zoom in conjunction with the other tool. So I may zoom in and then use the annotation tool in the zoomed in area, for example. So you can use it in conjunction. So let's go back a level. That was an image that we were looking at just then. I also now want to take a look at a document. So let's go back a level here. And I'm going to go ahead and open up this InDesign document. And you'll see that it's going to go straight into the media viewer that we discussed earlier. Now, if I was on an iPad, this is a multi-page document. If I was on an iPad, I would just use my finger to swipe between the pages here. So you could very quickly go through the pages. Because we're inside a document, we have different options available to us. We still have the annotation tools, we can use those. We still have the info tool, but you'll see that this has slightly different information because we're looking at a document. Linked files. Now, again, this is a feature that's available in version 16, but again, it was well hidden. If we click on that, where there is a difference between version 16 and 17, Xinet have now made this a lot more interactive for the end user. So I might be an end user, and this image of the bottle to one of my clients. The client doesn't have a clue what the image was called. All they know is it was on page 22 of a document that was created, I don't know, a year ago, for example. So very quickly, I can just come in here and it will actually highlight where on the page those images are being used. So it's very, very quick and easy to identify what the image is that you require. And then from there, you can just select it from the drop down. And from here, I can download it straight to my desktop, add it to the basket, or browse to the folder where it's been kept. So that's a really cool little feature, really great for people to do self-service and pull down assets that they need very quickly. Let's go take a look at the metadata, because there are a couple of subtle differences between an image and a document. Xinet now give you the ability to be able to pull out information from a document and store it inside the metadata panel. So, for example, I've asked it to pull out all of the font information that's stored inside this InDesign document, so I can see them all here. And I also asked it to pull out all of the swatches that are being used on that particular page, so we can get a breakdown of all of the colours and all of the swatches that are being used. So that's another little feature that's quite useful. Pages, this is where we can look at all of the pages in the document if we don't have the ability to slide across with our finger. And one other little button here that's quite useful, you can actually tick this little box here, and that allows you to set the default page for the preview that you want. So, for example, you may have an InDesign document and the first page is blank. If you tick that, it allows you to make that the preview on page 2 or 3 or whatever one you want. So again, another little shortcut you can use. And this button here, this is probably my favourite feature for the whole of the version 17. This is the text content feature. Now, if I select this, basically when you place an InDesign, a Quark Express, a PDF, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, HTML, CAD file onto the Xinet server, it will automatically mine that document for all of its text content. It will extract all of that text and it will physically store it into the Xinet database. And then it will make all of that text searchable through the new search engine that I'm going to show you very shortly. Now, not only does it do that, it also shows you where on the page that text is currently being used. So it actually shows you the text box where it's being used. And from there, you can tip the little arrow and you can get a full reading of what was in that text box. And you also have this little pencil icon, which allows you to click on that, and it will actually take you straight into an annotation window. It will extract out the text that was already in the text box, and maybe I need to take out this block of text here. I click on OK, and now I've got a sticky note annotation right within the document itself. So a really nice little feature that got added, and again, we'll show you that in more detail in a moment towards the end of the demo. And again, just to show you, versioning can also work on documents, not just images. You can see that we've got a previous version of this InDesign document.
Gary, we got a quick
question. And just to be clear, sure, go ahead.
We have a quick question. It's coming from Steve. He's wondering, is this in Portal only, or is Portal still separate?
So the functionality that I'm showing is heavily reliant on Portal. The new search engine and the interface is all Portal functionality. Anything to do with triggers and actions is at the venture level, and you don't need Portal. But most of the stuff I'm showing is definitely requiring Portal.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so let's go back one level here. So we've had a little look at the interface. We've had a look at a document. We've also had a look at an image, and we've also had a look at the display interface. So just while I'm in here, let me just quickly show you the asset timer, because I do think that's quite an important feature that is very underused within the Xinet system. So just to do that, let's go back into this folder here. Is totally fine. Let's go to our links. So I'm going to go into this image, and I'm going to go to my metadata, and I'm going to say that I purchased this image from Getty Images in 2009, and it expired in 2010. I'm going to save those changes, and then I'm going to come back here to this folder. Now you can see we've got this really ugly watermark that's been put across the image, and don't worry, you can set your own watermarks with your own information on there. And you'll notice that all of the options to download that file are now not available to me. If I did want to use that file, I could click on the padlock, and I could fill out a form which would request the use of that file, even though it's no longer being used. So we actually had a customer that bought a Xinet system literally just for that functionality, because they were an agency that didn't particularly manage their usage rights very well. And they actually had a budget set every year put aside because they knew they were going to get sued for misuse of imagery. So that budget, actually, they just bought the Xinet system for this one feature, and it's actually saved them money on being sued, believe it or not. So although that's a very small feature and a very small part of the system, it's definitely worth highlighting that because it's very underutilized within the Xinet community. Okay, so that's the asset timer. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the new search engine. Okay, so everyone in the call, I'm guessing, probably either has some experience with version 16 or with the Xinet system itself. So what I want to do is show you a couple of things to do with the search engine. But before I do that, I want to show you the filter tool. So down here, we have a little wrench icon. And if I click on that, it basically pops up with this little window. Now, personally, I don't like the look and feel of this window, but the functionality within it is actually very, very powerful. IO have actually done some work with this to make this look a lot nicer within our transition scheme that I'll show you a bit later. But basically what this is actually a filter window, and this can be used in two areas. It can be used to filter your search results, or it can be used to filter your display results. So currently, if we come out of here, what we're looking at is a folder here full of images. Now, I might want to show all of the images in modified date filter, or I might want to show it by when it was last accessed. Down here are some filters that is pulled out because it's looking at the data inside the folder. So it might tell me that there's some file types in here that are PDF file types. There's some that are Illustrator file types. There's some that have masks. There's some that are CMYK. I might want to look at all the Photoshop native files within that folder. If I click on this filter, it will display only those ones that we need to look at. So you can use this in displaying, and you can also use it in search results as well. So that leads me into my search area. Okay, so down the bottom here we have the search option, and if you click on that, you now get 3 options when you come to search. You can do a quick search, you can do a save search, or you can do an advanced search. Now, most people are pretty familiar with Google, so what Xinet tried to do is to make the interface a lot more Google-like. Now, one of the big problems with version 16 is that the search engine is actually very lethargic and quite slow, and it also doesn't give you a great deal of ability to search across multiple items. So Xinet recognised that, and rather than trying to sort of build functionality on top of it, they scrapped the entire search engine and rebuilt it from the ground up. So that basically gives them a lot more flexibility with the search tool, and I'm going to show you some of that flexibility right now. So save searches, obviously you can save a search, you can build up a search criteria, you can give it a name, and then you can save it. You also have the option to be able to save that so that other members of your group can see that saved search. So that's one benefit. I don't need to show a saved search, it's pretty straightforward. The other one is a quick search. Now, this is the one that's going to be used most commonly. So I'm going to do a search for the term mango. And you'll see we also now have the ability to search on whatever areas I have permission to search on. In version 16, if I did a search for mango, it would go away and it would search the entire Xinet database, even all of the things I don't have permission to see. And then once it's done that search, it will filter it down to show me the things I have permission to see. So it's pretty inefficient and it takes a long time. So this new search engine will actually only search over the areas where you do have permission to search. So it's a lot faster. It will also pull back the results and it will store them in cache. So when you page to the second page of results, it won't execute the search again. It will just pull it back from the cache. So it's way, way faster. I can't even begin to tell you how many thousands of times it's faster than it is in version 16. Okay, so let's hit search on Mango. And what it's going to do is going to search all the areas that I have permission, and it's going to pull back anything that had metadata with the word Mango, file names, folder names. It will search any annotation notes, and it will even search all of the text content in all of the documents. So let's take a look at our results here. On the left, we have folders that have been highlighted in yellow. And they've been highlighted in yellow because that's the only area that you can see folders. So that's how they identify a hit in a folder. On the right, we have an image here that has mango in the file name. So that one's pretty obvious why it found that result. This one here, snorkelinggirl.psd, I have absolutely no idea how it found the word mango. So if I click on it, it will actually highlight where it found the search term. So it's found the word mango right here, and that's why it's highlighted it for us in yellow. Now, the other thing that we can do here is we have 2 options. We can view the previous match or view the next match, or we can use this breadcrumb here to return to the search results. I'm going to go ahead and return to my search results. And a few other things here, you can see we have a PDF. If I click on the PDF, it's going to take me up here, and it's actually showing that it found the word mango on an annotated sticky note. So it even searches the annotations. Let's return to search again. This is my favourite part now. You can see it's found an InDesign document here, and it's found something on page 2 out of 3 of that document. If we click into the document, it will actually take us to that page. It will highlight the word mango in the text box, and it will actually highlight the text box on the page as well. So that's really, really powerful. That's the kind of thing that really does make the difference when you're looking at the new functionality. So for example, I may know that someone's made a spelling mistake in a document. I could do a search for the misspelling and see if it highlights it anywhere else in the document, for example. So that is really quite powerful, and that's something that's a massive improvement on version 16. Okay, so let's return to our search results here. So that was just a general search. You can see that it's also found search results. This is inside a video, and just to show you some other document formats, this is a Word document. If I click on the Word file, it even highlights the Word document where it's been highlighted in the Word file as well. So it doesn't care what the file type is either, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to return to my search, and actually I'm going to go to my top level and I'm going to do a different search this time. So I'm going to take out the term mango and I'm going to click on advanced options. So this is for people that want to build a specific search criteria. Most people will just use the quick search because it's Google-like. But you might want to build up some predetermined searches, for example, and then save them for people to speed up the search process. So in here, you have a whole long list of things you can now search on. Now, at the bottom are all of my metadata fields that I can search on. But Xinet have also given you the ability to search on a lot of things that occur in the database. So, for example, as an administrator, I might want to search on all of the files that got deleted today off of my file server, and you could do that type of search. You might want to find anyone that downloaded a high-risk file today. I can search on that. Anyone that printed a document. Anyone that worked on a video file. Or maybe I want to find out any annotations that have been created in the last 1 year, and I do a search on that and it'll pull back anything that's been annotated in the last year. So you can do a lot of searching on a lot of data that's not even metadata. These are just database information calls. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to do a pretty different search here. I'm going to do a search all. Now, anyone in the call that deals with Xinet on a daily basis in version 16, you will know that if you did a search all today, that would probably put the fear of God into you, because it will take an incredible amount of time to do a search all, because it will search the entire Xinet database and it will make it very slow for all of the other users that are logged on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a search all that contains tropics and South America. So that's my search term, and it's going to be the flag contains. So I'm going to hit search, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to find anything. So I didn't find anything. So I'm going to go back to search again, and this time I'm going to change my flag to aggregate has each. Now, don't worry about the terminology. Aggregate has each means absolutely nothing to me either. But just have a look at the result when I click on this. So we click search, and when we click search, it's actually pulled back 2 results this time. And if I click on one of those results, it will actually highlight that you found tropics in this metadata value and South America in this other metadata value. So why is that so important? Well, currently, Xinet will only do a parallel search at the moment. It will only search and find stuff if it's in one metadata value. This new aggregate has each flag allows you to search across multiple fields. So if we go back to our search, let's do the search again. I can even change this around. So maybe I want to take tropics and put that at the end. And I'm going to misspell South America. I'm going to take out the S, and I'm going to take out the A, and I'm going to hit search again. And even though we changed the order of that, it still finds it because it's found a part hit in one of the fields and it found a full hit in the other. And it doesn't care about the order that you set them in the search. So that's really, really powerful. You're getting very Google-like search results here with the aggregate has each flag. Now, as I said before, aggregate has each doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. So you also have the ability, if I hit search again, as an administrator, you can use this aggregate has each flag, and you can make people use that in the quick search field. So there's a setting that allows you to use that aggregate has each flag when you use the quick search. Now what that will do is it means it puts a little bit more overhead on the database because it's searching a lot more criteria, but it also makes the search results far better and a lot more reliable because you're searching on a lot wider audience of files. So just bear that in mind. That is an option that you can put into the quick search as well, and it makes it very, very powerful at that point. Okay, so that's the searching covered. couple of other little things that I'm going to show you here. One of them is the uploader. Now, I'm pretty sure most people here are familiar with the uploader tool. It's a great tool. It allows you to create droplets for people to deliver files into the system for you. Now, on my, let me go to my top level actually, and you can see that we've got this little button here. And if I click on it, what happens, the system detects that I'm logged in with my username and password of demo, and it actually looks at my user permissions at the back end, and it automatically builds me an uploader, and it also detects what machine I'm using. So it knows I'm using a Mac, so it delivers me an uploader in a Mac format straight to my desktop. So you, as an administrator, you don't have to create an uploader for every single user that comes into the system. You can just basically have this little button here that allows them to create their own uploaders as and when they need them. And the system's smart enough to go away and check their user rights and permissions and build an appropriate uploader that only allows them to upload where you've specified. So a little feature, but also a massive time saver if you use the uploaders extensively with big corporations that have a lot of users. So again, that's a really nice feature. Okay, so that leads me into a small workflow that I'm going to show you. So we've done the searching, yeah. So let's jump in and do you a small workflow. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to minimise the web browser, and I'm going to go into InDesign. Now, I don't know if everyone here is familiar with the asset browser, but I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with the plugins that you can have for InDesign, Photoshop, and Quark Express and those types of applications. So in the plugins for InDesign, we have one here called the asset browser. Now, this was available in version 16, but it's had some dramatic different functionality added for version 17. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the asset browser, and it's going to launch this little palette on my desktop. Now, don't worry about this palette. It looks pretty ugly, I will admit, but you can customize this. Essentially, it's just a web browser interface, and you can customize this however you like. So I'm going to go ahead and log in with my username and password. And let's imagine that I'm working in your studio and I use InDesign, Photoshop and Illustrator on a daily basis. Now, one of the most annoying things when you're an operator is that you have to go and search for things on the file system, you have to hunt around to find your images, and it can waste a lot of time. So this little palette allows me to work inside InDesign, Photoshop and Illustrator because it works across all three applications, and I can do pretty much everything from this palette. I can do searches in here, and I can navigate the file system depending on what permissions you've given me. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this folder here, Tropics Campaign, and in here you can see that I've got some images, and I've also got an InDesign document at the bottom here. Now, with the images, you'll see that we have two buttons underneath. We have one that says Open High Res and one that says Reveal High Res. If we click on Reveal, it will actually take us to the folder and highlight the image. So it's a very, very quick way to find where that file is stored on the server. Let's go back to InDesign. You don't even have to do that. You can actually click on the button there and it will actually open up the file for you. Open High Res. So this is the InDesign document. I'm going to click on Open, and it's going to literally open up this file for me. I'm going to update my links, and you'll see that I've now got an InDesign document open on my desktop, and the palette is still active. Now let's take a look at the document. It's a two-page file. There's page 1, and there's page 2. And on page 2, I have a little bit of work to do to finish the page up. So I'm going to go ahead and put some copy in here. I'm going to say, right, okay, Tropics Mango. So I put in some text. I also need to use a logo. I need to put a logo on this part of the page. So using this palette, you have the ability to do drag and drop. So I can literally drag and drop from the palette straight onto the page. And from there, I can position that into the page very, very quickly. So that's great. You can even use this in a remote workflow. If someone doesn't have a mounted server volume, we can still deliver the imagery to them very quickly because it delivers it in low-res format, and then we can relink it back up when you send it back into the Xinet system. So this is also great for remote workflows. So I also have an image here of this bottle. Now I could go around and look for that and try and open it up, but I also can see the image here in my palette. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. And you'll notice when I click on open, it's actually opened it up in Photoshop. So we're now open in Photoshop. But you'll also notice that the palette is still active even though we're inside Photoshop. So from here, I'm just going to do something obvious. I'm going to put a label onto the bottle. I'm going to save it. I'm going to close it down, come back to InDesign, and now I'm going to use the picture angler tool to relink that image back to the file that we just changed it to. So some real basic stuff. I've used the asset browser palette to do some work inside InDesign, and I'm happy with this file, so I'm just going to save it down now. So I'm just going to do save as, and I'm going to save it to my my Xinet server here, into this folder here called approvals, and into this folder called awaiting. So let's call this webinar demo file and save it right here. Okay, so we've done some work. I'm going to close down the InDesign document and let's go take a look at where we saved that file. Okay, so I saved that file into this folder here called awaiting, and you can see there it is webinar demo file.indd. So that's the file that we were just working on. Now, if I go to my email, what's going to happen, and it will take a few seconds to come through, is I set up a trigger and action that basically said any file arriving in this folder called awaiting, I want you to send an email notification to my clients. So in a second, sorry, hit the wrong button there. In a second, we should get an email notification. It does take a few seconds to come through, and because it's a demo, it's going to seem like an eternity. There we go. Okay, so there's our email, and if I click on that, there's a couple of things I want to point out here. So this email that I just received was obviously triggered using the triggers and actions functionality, which again is a very underused feature inside the Xinet system. Now, so basically the file arrived in here, that triggered off an action to email the client. Now you might notice that this email is completely branded up and it's been done in HTML. That's a new feature that we've got available to you in version 17. You can basically do some nice branded emails. You can cut and paste the HTML and put that into the trigger and action, and it will deliver it like this, the way that you're seeing it in my demo. So it's a really nice way to give your clients visual emails back through the system. Now let's imagine I received this email on my iPad and I'm sitting in London and your server's in New York, for example. What I can do is I can actually just click on the link inside the email, and that will take me, using a web browser, directly to the actual file itself. And from here, I might want to do some annotation work. Now, I was already logged in, so it didn't ask me to authenticate, but it would have asked me to authenticate had I not already had the browser open. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make some obvious changes here. I'm going to put a line through this image, and I'm going to say, please remove pick, no rights. So that's one comment that we've done. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to pop across here to page 2, and I need to do some work on that block of text that I put in a moment ago, Tropics Mango. So I could use the annotation tools, but I don't really want to. I'm going to come in here and use the text content tool, and from here I'm going to select the pencil icon, and I'm going to make an obvious change here. I'm going to put the word new at the beginning, new Tropics Mango. So I've just made a small text change. Let's make it a bit more obvious, put some dots in and click on OK. Okay, so I've made some basic annotation things in there, and just for the hell of it, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to draw around that, and I'm going to say remove word, for example, and hit save. Okay, so we've done some annotations. I'm happy with those. Normally, I would close down the web browser because I've finished, but just to show you how this all works, I'm going to leave this minimized in my dock and come back to it in a moment. So let's just minimize that. Now, what could have happened when that person made those annotation comments in the web browser? That could have, for example, triggered off an action to notify the guys in studio or an account manager to let them know that some work needs to be done. So if we go back to the asset browser palette, let's imagine I've received a notification. You'll see that I now had another little icon underneath that InDesign document that says open file with annotations. Now, if I click on that, what it does, it actually launches the InDesign document, and then it physically stamps those annotations that I just made directly into the document itself. So you can see it's doing that as we speak, and it's just told me that it's finished doing that. Now, the palette has now turned into a markup approval area. So it's telling me that on page 1, the user demo has put a line through something and told me to remove the picture because we have no rights. On page 2, they've drawn a circle around something and told me to remove the word. So you can go through and you can use these to make sure you do all of the amendments. We'll come back to that in a second. Just to have a look at the document, you can see that on layer 1, these are all the original elements of that InDesign document. And Xinet have put 2 layers inside the InDesign file. We've got one here for annotations, and these are the things that we drew. So these are the sticky notes, for example. And this other one here, Xinet Notes, is turned off by default, but if we turn it on, these are the things that we typed. The reason it's turned off by default is because it's actually showing me that here in the palette as well. So I'm going to go ahead and make the changes. I'm going to click here and it will take me directly to the annotation that we need to do. And I'm going to go ahead and make that change. So let's go to my annotations and let's go to layer 1 and let's turn off the image. So we've made that first change and I'm going to put a comment in here, change made, should we put in another pic. So not only did I make the change, I also put a comment back to the person that asked me to make the change. And then I tick it that I've done that amendment. It updates the window. Now I'm going to go to page 2. I've got another amendment to do here. It's telling me to remove the word. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to turn off the annotation and disagree with the comment. So let's do that. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Disagree, leaving alone. So I've just put a disagreement on that one. And this last one, this is a sticky note annotation. Now, the original text, Tropics Mango, is sitting on layer 1. You can see that right here. Now, I could retype all of that stuff if I want to, but it's not a very good use of my time. You're paying me money to be creative, not to sit there and retype something that someone's already typed. So what I can do here is I can go to the plugins and I can go swap edited text. And when I do that, Xinet actually pulls the original text and puts it onto a separate layer. You can see here it is original text. And it then pushes the new text into the original text box in the correct font, the correct stylization, and in the correct positioning. Now, all you have to do is make sure that there's no overflow when that went in there. So that saves the operator an incredible amount of time and energy, and it obviously saves you a lot of money from having to do those yourself. That could be used if you're doing translation, for example. You might just want to pull the French layer in or something like that. So there could be a lot of uses for that, and I'll let you decide if that's useful or not. So I'm going to go ahead and say done. I'm going to tick the box, and then I'm just going to save all of my comments, and I'm going to close down my document. So close, sorry, let me save it first and close. So all of them are done, and if I go back now to the web browser, remember we had this open a moment ago, and this shows you how live the system is with the back-end server. Now imagine I had this open on my iPad and I made those comments, and I was lucky enough to have a company that's very quick on turnaround. It's actually told me in the web browser that something's happened to this document since we had it opened. If I click on it, it will actually physically reload the web browser page for me. And it will actually show me all of the comments that have been done. It will show me the latest version of that document. And you can see that here's the new text, and there's the image that's been removed. Now, not only can it do that, if I click on compare, you'll see that I can now compare the documents side by side with the current one and the previous one. And you'll also notice down here, we can look at all of the annotation notes. So for example, this one here where it says remove word, this was done by the user demo. You can see that I'm the operator called AB, this could be my name for example, and it says there that I've disagreed with that comment and I'm leaving it alone. So you can have a bit of a collaboration session with the actual person that made the annotations originally. And on top of that, you can also pull a report. So if I click on report, maybe you need to keep an audit trail of all of these corrections for Sarbanes-Oxley or something like that. So if you want to, you can actually pull out a report and you can see it shows all of the comments and it highlights where on the page those comments were made and by who. And from there, you can actually print that out or you can just save it as a PDF if you want to. So this functionality where you can pull a report will work on anything. It will work on a Word file, an Excel document, anywhere you've done annotation work. So that's a really, really cool little feature that they added into there. So that's pretty much it on the actual interface stuff. I was going to quickly dive into Native Admin and show you a couple of features that are quite useful in there. So just bear with me a second and I'm going to log into Native Admin. So apologies if you're not an administrator, I do apologise. Some of this stuff may not be very interesting to you, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But I do think it's important that you know that this functionality is available. So just bear with me just for a few seconds. So inside Native Admin, as an administrator, there's a few things that you should know about. If I go to Database and I go to Actions, I'm going to show you that we have some new triggers and actions. So let's click on New Setting. So we have a few triggers and actions that are new inside here. The email trigger and action has always been available, but if I click on it, you'll see that this is where we can actually paste in here the HTML body content. So if you want to do HTML emails, this is where you would do it. The other one is inherit parent metadata. This is a new trigger, and this is quite useful. This allows you to set up a trigger that when someone places something into a specific folder, it will inherit all of the metadata attributes of the parent folder. So that could be a really big time saver if you're working on projects. So that's another one. Make file version and make version. This is the one that I showed you a moment ago where we can do versioning inside the actual web browser. So this is where you can specify what versions, how many versions you want to keep, what files you want to be versioned, etc., etc. And there's another one in here for transcoding. So if you do have the video module, you can actually set up triggers and actions to do transcoding automatically as well if you want to do that. So that's another option you can use. And I think there's one other one, PDF Convert, that allows you to automatically convert a PDF into a different format of PDF. So there's 5 different triggers and actions in there that are new or slightly different to version 16. And obviously all the ones that were there originally are still there as well. Okay, 2 other things I'm going to show you, then I'm done. First of all, if I go to the database, sorry, to the user volumes tab, we have users, and I'm going to edit a user. So I'm going to select this user here called demo. Let me find a different one actually that might not have anything applied. Demo 2, no, okay, so this one here doesn't have anything applied. So this user here, PDFIR, that's just the username of a user that can log into the system. Now you see that we have a little button down the bottom here called Administrative Privileges. And if I click on that, this basically allows you to sub-delegate some of the tasks in Native Admin to a different user. So for example, you might not want to give out the Native Admin password, but you might want your studio manager to be able to manage all of the printer queues and have control over the existing print queues and create new hot folders and spoolers. So I'm going to allow that user to have that functionality. And if I click on Submit, and I then change my user and log in as that user, basically when we go to their preferences, you'll see that that user now has a little admin button, and when they click on that, they can only see the part of Native Admin that you've allowed them access to. So this could be great if you want to sub-delegate some of the tasks to different people, but you don't want them to have the Native Admin password and you've still got control over the entire system yourself. So that's an important one I just wanted to show you. And last but not least, I'm going to go to the Portal tab. So anyone that's got Portal, and I'm going to go into the Portal server. And once we're logged in, there's a new area in here called the Site Manager. Now, this is a new way that you can basically create sites inside the Xinet system. So if I want to create a new site, I'm going to add a site. So this is for my new client that's called Webinar. And I'm going to base it on the current exhibit style, and I'm going to click on Submit. What that does, it cuts out a lot of work for me. It's gone through, it's created a new site called Webinar. It's redirected, it's taken out any references of exhibit and changed that to Webinar, so it saves you a bunch of work. And then it's taken me straight into the Edit Site tab, where I can set all of my settings for that particular portal site. And you can see there's a lot of options in there now. And from here, once I've done that, I can go to the theme editor, and in here, Xinet now give you the ability to do some basic stylization inside the theme editor. So maybe I just want to change the look and feel. I want to change the font color of this site to be, I don't know, red, for example, and I can apply it here, and it will change that in that site that we just created. Xinet are going to do a lot more work on this interface, but it's a very easy way to get started on doing some very basic customization work inside the system.